Well, I promised you 4 dark streams or 4 streams a week, and here we are. At least we kept, at least we kept to it for the first week, huh? Vox Day, unauthorized TV, and Castelia Cathedra, or Castelia Library. Today it was kind of nice. Dorking Wanderers has been putting up on their Instagram page uh, different sponsors, basically showing the parts of their uniform that have the sponsor's logo on it. And so today, if you go to Instagram and look up the Dorking Instagram page, it's got a big picture of the home jersey with Castelia Library across the back. Looks good. Looks really good, actually. And it's good marketing for us as we gear up to actually start getting caught up to our book backlog. Um, we were just working on getting ribbons, and we're waiting on the boards. It'll probably be about 2 weeks before we start actually turn the whole production process on en masse. I mean, obviously we're producing books right now, but it's still, just mostly testing, making sure we've got everything working properly. Um, but once the flow starts, it's not going to stop. So so that's good. And I actually worked out a deal with our new pigskin leather supplier to get it drop shipped directly from the source, which is going to save us, you know, 20 cents a book or something like that. But every little bit counts. And over time, as we build up the relationship with them, it's just going to get better. So, not a lot going on worth commenting in the news other than, as you might have seen on the blog, I'm getting a little bit suspicious about the stability of the financial system. We're starting to see strange behavior out of the banks with regards to uh, checking to see if you really want to make that transfer. um, when we're buying 200 cowhides, or when we're buying 1,600 cut pieces of leather or whatever, obviously it's an amount of money, right? And so when you know we've gotten used to the idea of the banks getting curious when, or concerned, and just checking when it's a large transfer. But when they're starting to check out transfers of like $5,000, you have to wonder what's going on. I mean, how close to the edge are they living if they have to be managing at that level? And then today, the Spanish government announced that you have to get permission in order to withdraw more than 3,000 euros of cash. And that tends to indicate, and coming so quickly after that big blackout where people were unable to use their debit cards for 2, 3 days in some places. Um, I don't think it's the usual um, trying to push people towards a cashless society. In the past, that's what it has obviously been, right? But when you see this happening along with the other behavior by the banks, um, and that the US money spigot got cut off, then you have to be a little bit concerned about the stability of the financial system. Long and short, I advise people to, try to keep a couple thousand in cash around, um, so that you have it in case the power outages, the system goes down, whatever. You're going to need to be able to pay for food and water and that sort of stuff. So I'm not talking about like hardcore prepper stuff. I'm talking about just um, maintaining reasonable functionality for a week. Um, yeah, Quiet Slot Bear says zero reserve bank and cat clawing at the bag. It does feel that way. I don't pay the same kind of attention to the economics like I used to because the Federal Reserve eliminated all of the tools, all the statistics that I used to use to keep track of it. And so it's the numbers are all just garbage now. And there's no point in, some people, some people keep paying attention to the same garbage numbers, even though they know they're garbage. Like it's like paying attention to the inflation rate. You notice I've never, in however long it's been, since 2000 or whatever, 2001, you notice I've never paid any attention to the inflation rate because it's nonsense. I've tended not to pay very much attention to GDP for the same reason. I proved to you back in 2009 in the Return of the Great Depression, I proved that the margin of error on the average quarterly GDP report is so large that it can't even you can't even determine if the economy is growing or shrinking. And so there's no point in paying close. It's actually a mistake to pay close attention to numbers that are bogus because you're going to reach a false conclusion and you're going to have a unreasonable amount of confidence in your opinion when if you know it's nonsense and you don't have any reliable information, you know that you don't know it. Socrates always said the big advantage he had over other people is that they thought they knew and he knew he didn't. And so that's philosophically that's a very strong, very important point to keep in mind. It's better to know that you don't know than to think you know something and be incorrect. So obviously there's a new fake pope. I don't know if you've seen the picture of him when he was first getting ordained, but wow. I mean, he looks like an evil gamma. He actually looks more innocuous now than he did then, and he still looks a bit troublesome. So I expect absolutely nothing good out of this guy. It would be nice to be surprised, but I think that he is straight up pure clown world, and it's not a surprise to me that some of his anti-Trump stuff has been leaked out. His old anti-Trump, anti-Vance posts. Not surprising at all. So we'll have a good idea that things are getting cleaned up when if he doesn't hold the office very long. So that should be interesting. There's the European Union leaders are gathered together to make a show of force for the 37th time. Has anything good come out of Chicago? The first Psychosonic album. We recorded that at Chicago Tracks. That's not true. We mixed it at Chicago Tracks. We actually recorded it the first one was recorded at a studio in Minneapolis. It was where Soul Asylum used to record. And then we mixed the album down at Chicago Tracks. I say we. I did nothing at Chicago Tracks except for try to survive all the being in a room with 4 heavy chain smokers. But it was cool because that's where Ministry and KMFDM and My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult, a lot of the Wax Trax bands that I liked, they recorded there. And Paul from Ministry actually stopped by to visit, and it was really cool to get to meet him. And the guy who was our engineer was also the engineer for Ministry when they did Jesus Built My Hot Rod. So that was fun to hear about that. and hear how that came about. Um, it is true that they can't do pizza right. Kojia says Psychosonic is so good, and if it wasn't for the stream, I wouldn't know about it. Crazy. Well, I'm glad to hear that you like it. Um, it's obviously 27 years later, it's pretty dated, but I think it held up reasonably well over time. Better than some, not as good as others. But I do have a treat for you if you like Psychosonic. In fact, I was just talking to Paul yesterday about this. Um, but Paul's given me permission to play around with some of his old music. And there's a song that before we formed Psychosonic, when Paul was still doing his own thing, I used to sit in and play keyboards when he would perform. Not very often, like maybe four, 4 to 6 times total. Interestingly enough, once was actually at a party, uh, a big fraternity house party that Space Bunny was actually at years before we met. So that was kind of amusing. Um, she didn't remember us, but she did remember the main band that had played later. So she may not have even been there at the time we played. But anyhow, I always like this song. It's wildly dated. Um, doesn't hold up well, but it's such a cool song. And uh, plus I always liked it because I was there the night that the events that inspired it happened. And so, um, it was kind of funny when, because I'd listened to the song many times, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, like this is all about that one night, and Paul was like, yeah, it is, and that was, I mean, it shows you what a immature songwriter I was because, um, yeah, I mean, frankly, it pretty much took me until about this year to actually be able to write songs about personal experiences. Now, part of that is because I'm, for somebody who does streams and writes and talks to people a lot, I'm actually pretty reserved about my own life and my own perspective, and certainly the experiences that I've had. And it was a criticism that a good friend of mine had given me back in the Psychosonic days. He's like, everything's all headspace. Everything's all ideas. There's no heart in it. There's no feelings. And and in retrospect, it's obvious that I was just holding myself back, closing myself off, which I still mostly do. You know, look at the books I write. you know, there's there's nothing personal in A Throne of Bones, A Sea of Skulls, A Grave of Gods. You know, it's all imagination. That's that's the space I'm comfortable in. One of the things I wrestle with a lot in writing Sigma Game is how much of my direct personal experience do I share, and because I don't like to, um, but sometimes it's relevant, so you have to. Um, Anyhow, on the subject of has anything good come out of Chicago, definitely not the pizza. I've been to the Chicago pizza places. I thought it was terrible. I think Chicago deep dish pizza shouldn't even be called pizza. It's pizza soup, in my opinion, served in a bowl of dough. I mean, it's very much not my thing. Um, I will say that, strangely enough, the best Mexican I've ever had, I had in Chicago at El Norte Taqueria. I have no idea if it's still around. Please feel free to Google it and let me know. But it was this little hole in the wall thing right next to a bar. Incredible burritos, Just absolutely incredible. Best I've ever had to this day. In other events, so there were no fireworks at the big Russian May 9th parade. Trump announced yet another irrelevant ceasefire, which apparently Pakistan and India are, unsurprisingly, already breaking. But I don't really think it's going to get too serious over there. China certainly doesn't seem to be too bothered about it, and if China's not worried about it, then there's no reason anyone else should be. So, and of course, the one interesting thing, and this hasn't been too widely reported yet, but there have been rumors that AIPAC has been essentially ejected from the strategic meetings, and Trump has reportedly broken with Netanyahu. I don't know if that's true. We'll have to see, but we'll have to see. But it could be interesting. Obviously, that would be a very good sign for Americans that they would actually get the America First that they voted for, and not the Israel First that, for some reason, people like Governor Abbott in Texas and Trump himself have been pushing on people. But we'll see. So, anyhow, I had a request in the last stream to know if I had updated at all the Ghosts of Bangkok song that's the theme for that new movie script that Chuck and I have been working on. And in fact, I do. So if you'll bear with me, this is the new theme, the new version of the Ghosts of Bangkok theme song. And what's interesting about it is I did the first version, was very ethereal, very female voice, very kind of more of a slightly spooky vibe, but very mellow, lots of strings, airy sound. And then I did a heavier version, which I really like, and probably maybe might stick with. We'll see. It's just got this really great bass to it, but it does have a few infelicities in the song, which is fine for a song for a movie soundtrack, because they're only going to clip out 20 seconds of it here and there for the most part. That's fine, and especially with the because there's always talking over in the trailer. There's always talking over it. There's always explosions and screams and stuff. So I'm less concerned about the infelicities for this song, but I ended up doing another one just because I thought, well, what if we combine the two? What if we take the heavier, harder music and we combine it with the female voice? And this is the result. If you remember the other ones, I'm not going to play them for you tonight. This is not going to be a particularly long stream. But tell me what you think. So this is the third version of the Ghosts of Bangkok.
changes in the fog and mist. Wicked hands reach from the past, pierce the night like broken glass. The evil rises in the dark. The evil rises in the absence of the light. Fear is tinder to the spark. The ghosts of Bangkok rule the night. Ancient spirits hear their names. Blood stains the bricks and feeds the flames. Midnight fades to urban glow, shapes that we should never know. Silent shadows, silent screams. A city haunted by their dreams. Forgotten are the victims' cries, hidden where the darkness lies. The evil rises, the evil swells and grows and rises in the dark. Fear is tinder to the spark. Fear is rising in the absence of the light. The ghosts of Bangkok rule the night. The ghosts of Bangkok rule the night. The ghosts of Bangkok rule the night. The ghosts of Bangkok rule the night.
So that was pretty intense. Anyhow, obviously, you guys don't know anything about the story yet, but I mean, it's Chuck Dixon at his most unleashed, and combined with me at some of my darkest, and so. But it's also strongly Christian, so it's pretty intense, and I actually think that version is I think that version is the best one yet, in my opinion, just in terms of suiting the thing. It'll be interesting to see if we're permitted to do the entire soundtrack or how it works, but either way. I think that was, I was pretty happy with that, how that turned out. Now this next one, this is the one I mentioned before. This is the this is the complete remaking of Paul Sebastian's Perfect Stranger. He should not be blamed for any of this, other than he wrote most of the lyrics. I did have to tweak them around and basically chop stuff out mostly, just to fit the faster pace and all. It's a crazy vibe. It's not a very conventional structure, but the original song is so far from any sort of reasonable structure that there was no helping it. But I kind of like it. So anyhow, and this, this is one of the nice things about the stream and stuff, is this where I can experiment, show you guys stuff. Some of the stuff works, some of the stuff doesn't. That's cool. Anyhow, this is Perfect Stranger, and That's actually not too bad a representation of Holly, who was the let's just say the original inspiration for the song, um, and of course the Green MG. So this is I don't even know, this isn't even a band per se. This is Perfect Stranger, the 2025 Lunatic Edition.
She came out of nowhere into my plane of life on a moonlit night. Temptation's here tonight, an offer of a ride. It could be a lie when the judgment call is made. It's time to fly, because I told the lies and now you should know. The world's on fire, I fall for the things that hit me most. I don't know where we're going now. Fate, changing with the position of the moon. The warm summer wind of the night flies at the speed of light. Faster, trying to discover the secrets that I'll never tell. Stranger than fiction is better than a hard sale. If danger, yeah, is a birthright, you can find out tonight. I live the lies and now you should know that the world's on fire. I fall for the girls that hit me most. I don't care where we're going now. Everything I ever wanted's waiting on the driver's side. I'm catching a ride with a perfect stranger. Decide to play. Girl, don't look too hard for the secrets you will never know, 'cause that's the fun of the game. And guess who's on a streak right now? Of your secrets on a moonlit night. Tell me lies tonight, alright. Inside an offer of a ride. No time to lie when the judgment call is made. It's time to ride, because I heard the lies and now you should know that the world's on fire. I fall for the things that hit me most. I think I know where we're going now. Everything I ever want is waiting on the driver's side. I'm catching a ride with a perfect stranger. Everything I ever need is waiting here before my eyes. They say I should know better, but I decide to play.
So that was Paul Sebastian's Perfect Stranger, wildly mutilated by me. West by Godbear says he digs it and wants to know if it's going up on Spotify. Probably not. It's really up to Paul. But I mean, if Paul gives me permission to like release it as a remake or something, sure. Why not? But one of the things that I do here on, and I appreciate you guys indulging me in this, is a lot of this stuff is experimental stuff. Like, for example, the next thing I'm going to show you is not going to be released because it's a earlier version of a song that went in a very different direction that is going to be released. And I don't want to, I prefer to not play the songs that I'm going to release publicly on here until it's time to release them. Now, sometimes, like for example, I had no intention of ever releasing Siddhartha because it was never anywhere releasable. I played it the other night here just because I was shocked at how well it turned out. And of course, I was just wanted to show you guys what 4.5 could do. But that's kind of an exception. But anyhow, this next one, my next project, as you're probably aware, I've mentioned this before. The next Soul Sigma album is going to be called Byronics. And I've now finished, when I say finished, my part is done, but I haven't gotten the master yet. I've already talked to the engineer. I've already arranged it. And so I'll get him the stuff when it's time. I mean, the first Soul Sigma album just came out not that long ago. I don't think I'm going to do any sort of crowdfund related to this, unless there was some unusual demand for it. But Kajia says, my best friend made a 21 album music project over the last 15 years as an inside joke between us. So I have all the time and enthusiasm for any musical indulgence by the Dark One. Well, I appreciate that. I do. I also realized that, it's always funny how people show up for the streams and then they see, oh, he's going off on music again. Numbers just plunge. I understand most people don't pay attention to me for the music. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. It's not going to change what I do in the slightest, of course. But anyhow, that's why it's probably a good thing that I'll be doing the streams with John and doing the streams with Owen. That'll keep it on the events and commentary line a little better. But the thing is, it's so incredible what we can do now. I mean, this is honestly, my life would have been very, very different, I think, if we'd had this technology available back in the day, back in the early 90s. But anyhow, Byronics, what they are is they're all poems by George Gordon Byron, Lord Byron, and it's a little bit more challenging than it sounds because it's not just about taking his poems and then putting them in music, because obviously what a poem lacks that most songs have is a chorus. But it's a little bit daunting to write a chorus that's going to be sandwiched between the verses written by one of the greatest wordsmiths in the history of the English language. And so, you can't just go, yeah, baby, yeah, while he's dealing with that. West by Godbear says, the AI music has been a revelation. I wasn't aware of how good it could be prior to your music dabbles. Well, keep in mind, what you're hearing now is as good as it's been for the past week. It wasn't this good 2 weeks ago. It's changing so fast. And it's absolutely unreal. It's already better than most professional musicians can produce now in terms of audio quality. It's going to be phenomenal in another year. I mean, in another year, if you're not using it, you're going to get left behind. Just in terms of quality, in my opinion. But anyhow, speaking of quality, so it's challenging to make sure that you don't wreck the vibe when you're putting a course together, right? So anyhow, this next one, again, this is not going to be a version that gets released, but it's a version that was one of the kind of the side paths. But I like it. And this is actually based on his most famous poem, which everybody knows the first line of, and nobody knows the actual poem. I was kind of shocked when I was reading it, not an embarrassingly short period of time ago, because I always assumed that I knew the poem. But I didn't. It was like that midwit level knowledge where I'd heard of it, and I knew the first line, "She walks in beauty like the night." But I was always confusing it with the poem that ends in, she was the darkness, she was the universe. They're two separate poems. Most people think they're the same poem, as I did for a while. Anyhow, so this is a version that I called "She Walks in Beauty," and it is based on the poem "She Walks in Beauty." So please to enjoy.
Cloudless clouds.
So that was so that was She Walks in Beauty, Soul Sigma, and that is not a version that you're likely going to hear released, because I already have a finished version that I want to put on the album. That one, just to be honest, it was a little bit too positive and uplifting for Soul Sigma. It's kind of an unusual poem for Byron, because most of his poems involve death, lost love, things going poorly, and it's interesting to to see how the vibe of it is actually kind of appropriate to that poem. That's why I like that version of it. It's got a couple like little infelicities. You probably noticed that the both at the very end and then at the end of the guitar solo going into the last chorus, the notes were not quite right. They're a little bit discordant. But again, it's not going to be publicly released, so Lunatic Farmer said, I really like that one. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's really good. It's just not Soul Sigma. Good, so it's no wonder he's your favorite poet. Yeah, the thing is, I think of myself as a generally optimistic person. You can't engage in various endeavors if you don't have like some confidence that things will go well, if you're not optimistic somehow. But I realize that I do have a tendency to kind of gravitate to the darker side of the creative arts. When Space Bunny said I think I had done a song or something, and she wanted to hear it, and I said, well, just to warn you, this is kind of more on the darker side of my creative space. And she said, honey, you only have one side of your creative space, which is generally true, although not entirely. That Disney Souvenir song, I think, was pretty, straight up pop, positive. But yeah, I suppose the Book of Ephesians. It's probably one of the first. I was one of the first to do what they called Christian dark fantasy, Christian horror, and I guess with the music it did kind of the same in that song. But but yeah, I absolutely love Byron's perspective. And he wasn't a good person, but then neither am I. So I think that it's important to recognize and understand where you are creatively, even if you don't necessarily think of yourself that way or like it. I've got a book coming out soon. I'm just about finished with it, called Death and the Maiden, and they're all, I think, quite funny for the most part. Stories about death. You read the no, I think it's called Death and the Devil. It's the name of the book. I don't recall, but anyhow, I do think that it's normal for those of us who are cognizant of mortality without necessarily being enamored of it. You know, I don't. I find a lot of those, self-consciously death metal bands and all that. I tend to find them to be just wildly fraudulent. Yeah, I remember some gamma. I didn't know the term at the time, but I remember some gamma saying, sometimes I'm just I'm frightened of my own I'm frightened of my own imagination and capabilities, and I was like, okay, you're an unpopular person, and sometimes your anger makes you want to go and pull a Columbine. We didn't know that Columbine was a term back then, but it's like, look, you're not dark, you're just mad. You're just angry and dramatic. um, the metalhead scene got so converged, it's all about being gay and submitting to authority now. Really? That's interesting. Um, I can't even I can't even envision that. Um, but it's not a surprise because, yeah, as I think it was maybe Slash said, you don't get really good at the guitar by being popular and spending a lot of time going out with your friends. You know, um, generally speaking, if you're dealing with some uh, introvert hiding behind his hair who's really good at guitar, like Slash, you're generally dealing with somebody who's not very popular and got some issues. The amount of blue hairs at metal concerts would blow your mind. I suppose. I mean, I don't really pay any attention to the various scenes anymore. Um, but you know, when I started making them, and now that I would rather make music for the most part than listen to other people's music. Um, there are exceptions, you know. It's the same as with nerd culture. Once it got big enough, all the tourists jumped in. Well, yeah, I mean, anything that gets popular enough, or that gets attention is going to draw attention seekers. I mean, look at all the self-appointed sigmas, or even better yet, look at all the people who have appointed themselves explainers. I mean, we were commenting about this discussing this on Sigma Game the other day. Like, why is everybody telling everybody else what a Sigma is? I mean, it's the strangest thing. Instead of just, that's why I suspect there's some level of inorganic aspect to it, because I don't recall, let's say when the new atheism became a thing. I don't recall everybody offering to explain stuff. you know. 2030, the converged furry scene. Well, we'll have to ask JDA about that. That's a joke. For some reason, JDA's critics have accused him of being a furry, which I don't know if that's like a racist term for Mexicans or what, but I'm pretty sure that I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty confident that JDA spends 0% of his time dressing up in an animal suit. So, it, it's always amazing. The freak shows always find a way to behave in some absolutely cringeworthy, unacceptable manner. Anyhow, well, that's all for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. To be fair, you did that furry persona AI. Yeah, but he was already getting it then. Like we did that because of what people have been saying. So anyhow, but anyhow, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and I will look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. I think the next one will be Monday, and I'll be on Owen's stream. Have a good weekend, and don't forget that tomorrow is Mother's Day, at least over here. So get your mother some flowers and a card. I'm Box Day, and this is the Darkstream.